Before the rise of Christianity, Europe was a land of many gods, countless spirits, and sacred landscapes. Every forest, river, mountain, and stone had its own soul, its own power. From the snow-covered lands of the Norse to the warm valleys of the Mediterranean, Europe was not united by a single religion, but by a shared way of life: paganism. The ancient Greeks worshipped gods who looked and acted like humans, flawed, passionate, powerful. Zeus, Hera, Apollo, and Artemis ruled, not from far away, but close to human hearts and minds. Their temples were more than religious sites. They were cultural centres, where art, philosophy, and politics thrived. The Romans adopted many of these gods, mixing them with their own. Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury became central to Roman identity. Religion and government were tightly linked. A good citizen honoured the gods, made sacrifices, and celebrated festivals. The health of the empire was believed to depend on divine favour. Further north, Celtic tribes filled the forests of Gaul, Britain, and Ireland with stories of gods and spirits. Druids led their people in rituals tied to the earth and the stars. Sacred groves, misty hills, and megalithic stone circles were places where the spiritual world touched the human one. In Scandinavia, the Norse believed in a great cosmic tree, Yggdrasil, connecting all worlds. Gods like Odin, Thor, and Freya were worshipped through feasts, songs, and heroic tales. Battles, seasons, and dreams were all signs of divine will. Paganism was not a single organized religion. It was a diverse living tradition. Myths passed down through stories, rituals tied to harvests, solstices, and nature's rhythms. Faith was not about belief in one truth. It was about living in harmony with the world. This world lasted for thousands of years. But then came change. With the rise of Christianity in the Roman Empire, especially after Emperor Constantine's conversion, things shifted rapidly. Temples were closed, old gods were declared demons, and Christianity, once a small underground movement, became the official faith of Europe. But what if history had taken a different path? What if Europe was still pagan? Imagine a Europe where the ancient gods were never forgotten, where Odin, Zeus, Brigid, and Mars were still worshipped, where sacred groves were alive with rituals and temples echoed with prayers, not to one god, but to many. This isn't just fantasy. For thousands of years, paganism shaped the beliefs, values, and cultures of Europe. Before Christianity spread, every tribe, kingdom, and empire had its own gods, its own myths, its own sacred traditions. Nature, stars, animals, fire, water, everything had spiritual meaning. Religion was woven into the fabric of everyday life. But what if history had taken a different path? What if paganism had survived? What if Christianity had never become dominant? What would Europe, and perhaps the world, look like today? In this alternate timeline, the Roman Empire plays a key role. Historically, Emperor Constantine's conversion to Christianity gave the new religion imperial support. Churches were built. Pagan temples were shut down. Over time, the Christian church grew into a vast and powerful institution. But in this alternate history, Constantine never converts. He remains loyal to the old Roman gods, Jupiter, Mars, Minerva. Christianity stays a minor religion, perhaps persecuted or ignored. Without political power, it doesn't spread across Europe. Paganism continues, not as a fading past, but as a living faith. Across the continent, spiritual life remains deeply tied to the land. Each region keeps its own pantheon. In the north, people still call on Thor for strength and Freya for fertility. In the west, Celtic druids hold ceremonies under moonlight, honouring the spirits of rivers and trees. In the south, Roman and Greek temples remain centres of both religion and education. Statues of gods stand tall in public squares, not just as art, but as objects of worship. Religion is local, personal, and diverse. There's no central authority like the Vatican, no single holy book. Instead, there are myths passed down through generations, rituals based on the seasons, and sacred festivals that bring communities together. The effects on politics are massive. Without the Catholic Church, there's no pope to crown kings or guide empires. Monarchs gain legitimacy not from a church, but from divine signs, visions, or the blessings of local priests. Sacred kingship becomes more magical and symbolic, chosen by fate, prophecy, or nature's will. Religious wars as we know them might not exist. No crusades, no reformation, no religious persecution on a global scale. Conflicts would still happen over land, trade, power, but not driven by a universal faith trying to convert others. Education and knowledge might develop along different lines. In the real world, monasteries preserved much of the classical knowledge, but in this world, learning is held by temple scholars, forest shamans, and priest philosophers. Astronomy, herbal medicine, and natural science are deeply connected to spiritual practices. Reading the stars, understanding the elements, and listening to dreams are all part of learning. Some pagan traditions might encourage curiosity and experimentation. Others might hold on to mysticism and taboo. The balance would vary from region to region, but overall the strict control that the church once held over science and thought would be absent. Art and architecture also followed different paths. Instead of grand cathedrals with stained glass windows, Europe is filled with sacred stone circles, towering temples, and carved wooden idols. Forests are not cleared, they are protected, because they're sacred. Mountains and rivers are not just geography, they're divine beings. The modern calendar looks different. Holidays like Christmas and Easter don't exist. Instead, Yule, Imbolc, Ostara, Beltane, and Samhain are celebrated. These festivals follow the cycle of nature, the solstices, the harvests, the full moons. People light fires to welcome the sun back in winter, dance to bless the crops in spring, and honor the dead in autumn. Many of these rituals were once considered pagan and were absorbed into Christian customs. In this world, they stay true to their roots. Daily life has more spiritual awareness. People speak to gods not in formal prayers, but in everyday moments. A hunter might whisper to the forest spirits. A mother might offer milk to a household goddess. A sailor might carve runes on his ship for protection. Belief is not separated from life. It is life. Technology still advances. Cities are built. Trade routes open. But everything evolves in a cultural framework where nature is sacred and gods are many. This could mean greater respect for the environment. Forests are holy. Water is life. The earth is not just a resource, it's a mother. But not everything is ideal. Pagan societies too had their flaws. Some practiced sacrifice. Others believed in bloodlines and tribal supremacy. Without a universal moral code, values differ across tribes and cultures. One group's virtue might be another's sin. Justice, gender roles, and power would be defined differently, shaped by each myth system. Slavery might last longer in some regions. Caste systems or tribal exclusivity might remain strong. But in other regions, freedom and equality might be sacred duties. It all depends on which gods and values a culture upholds. Fast forward to the modern era. Instead of crosses on churches, we see statues of Artemis, Odin, or Cernunnos in town centres. Parliament buildings have murals of mythological battles. Pilgrimages are made to sacred lakes, not holy cities. The internet still exists, but full of forums discussing ancient rituals, godly visions, and modern pagan philosophy. Science and spirituality walk together, not in opposition. Astrology is not fringe, it's mainstream. Dream interpretation is a respected field. Forests are protected not only by law but by faith. And globally, Europe's colonial empires might take a different shape. Without Christian missionary zeal, colonization might look more commercial than religious. Or perhaps it doesn't happen on the same scale. Without a unified Europe under Christian rulers, global domination might never become the goal. In this world, the spiritual map of the globe is entirely different. Indigenous religions everywhere are not suppressed but respected. The idea of one God, one book, one truth never becomes the global norm. The world becomes a web of local traditions, spirits, and stories, all alive and evolving. In the end, it's not about whether this alternate world is better or worse. It's about understanding how deeply belief shapes reality. The gods we follow, or stop following, leave marks on our cities, our laws, our dreams, and our future. What if Europe was still pagan? It's a question of imagination, yes, but it's also a window into the past, and a mirror to the present. Because maybe deep inside, some of those old gods never truly died. Maybe they still live in the forest we protect, in the stories we tell, and in the questions we ask.